Hi, this is Bastiaan, and this is my adaptation of a game I played against Alesh. This was a handicap match, so the purpose of the game was that I had to win by mating my opponent within 30 moves. So anything but that, and I would have lost the game. Also, I had to play the Scandinavian, so I'm playing black. Game starts with e4, d5, and I play the Scandinavian. Knight c3. So at this point, queen has to retreat, and there are several options. I can play a5, retreat to d8. Queen d6 was played, which is my favorite system, and play continues with d4. At this point, my first priority is to keep the queen safe. So this knight can jump to e4 or b5 to attack the queen, and this will cause black to waste time, so I need to cover those squares first. Knight f6, white plays knight to f3, now a6, so the queen is relatively safe now on d6. And white plays bishop to d3 and b5 with the idea of fianchettoing the bishop, which is a bit lazy actually, because I typically play b5 after the fianchetto by white. So if white plays g3, then b5, bishop g2 and bishop b7, you can see that black has first control of the diagonal, and this knight is getting pinned because of the strong control of the bishop on b7. However, g3 wasn't played, and white develops on d3 and b5. And the reason why this is a little bit more inaccurate, it's definitely not bad, but if white plays correctly and plays knight to e4, which was played, we can see a fork between the two pieces, so I can either move my queen, or which will lead to a doubling of the pawns, or recapture with my own knight, which was the idea of knight to f6, but knight recapture is best. But after bishop recaptures, we can see that now it's white that has control of the diagonal, and this prevents black from developing on b7. So rook to a7 and bishop to e3. So at this point we can already see white is getting some good development in. 3 minor pieces developed and 1 queen developed by black. But white always must be careful for queen tactics. For instance, this point, black can play queen b4 check with an attack on b2, and I was planning to do so, but first I played the in-between move f5, and this more or less kicks the bishop back, because there are no safe squares for the bishop to go to, and bishop would have to retreat to d3, and I get an extra pawn developed. But now white starts complications and plays d5, leading to pawn takes, and then perhaps pawn takes knight, and from the other side leading to bishop takes rook and bishop takes knight. And even so, there are still complications with queen to b4 check. So let's see what could happen if queen b4 check first. If c3, then queen captures bishop, and it's no longer possible for white to capture the rook because of the discovered check. So c3 doesn't work. Knight to d2, It's very nice. Blocks the check and prevents queen takes bishop. And if we get queen d2, black can still play queen takes pawn or queen takes bishop, but at this point queen takes bishop is actually a trap, because the pin doesn't really work anymore. Because after queen takes, white can play knight to g5, attacking the queen, and then queen takes on g2, and white is basically forced to castle. Now rook has to move because of the attack on a7, and rook g1 will trap the queen. So there are some complications after pawn to d5, but queen move wasn't played. I go for the exchange, so I'm sacrificing the exchange. I'm playing pawn takes bishop, offering up the rook on a7, so white captures the rook on a7, and pawn takes knight. At this point again, white has two options really, either to recapture the pawn or to continue with capturing my own pieces. So if bishop takes b8, which wasn't played, black is having a strong advantage after pawn takes pawn, threatening the rook. Rook g1 to block it, then the queen can attack h2 to kick off the rook, blocking the promotion. And now white has to move his king in order to protect the rook, and black can get a few checks in. Queen a5 check, king d2, so he can't retreat behind the pawns. Queen takes pawn, check, king c1 perhaps, and then queen to b7, which will attack the trapped bishop on b8. So capturing on b8 is a mistake, and it wasn't played. The most accurate move was played, queen takes pawn. Now of course the bishop is still attacking the knight on b8, so we get a check in first. White blocks. I play another in-between move, queen takes pawn, threatening the capture of the rook. She's more valuable than piece on b8. White castles, and now I have to move my knight in order to save it. Knight goes to d7. Bishop to d4, attacking the queen. So the queen needs to move, and there are two options really. Either b4 and flee, or capture the pawn on c2. So queen takes pawn was played, which is actually pretty inaccurate, because after rook to c1, white can already recapture the pawn on c7. Queen retreats, and then rook takes c7. But at this point, white is the one having a winning position after the correct moves. Knight to f6. Knight to f6 has to be played because of the rook attacking the bishop, and the queen needs to protect it because there's no escape for the bishop on c8. So knight moves, bishop is being protected. Bishop takes knight, pawn recaptures, can't recapture with the other pawn because of pin of the queen, so the continuation is basically forced. And then the winning move for white would be